Good morning. It is March 19th, 2021. Now, March 19th and March 20th, March 19th going into March 20th, is the beginning of the Thelemic High Holy Days. And we have just been discussing in our reading of the Magick of Aleister Crowley, we've just been discussing the circumstances surrounding, I'm not sure I'm live here. Yes, there I am. We were discussing the circumstances of the reception of the Book of the Law, which started the whole Thelemic idea. And we were discussing Rose and Aleister Crowley honeymooning in Cairo and circumstances of her falling into a trance and everything, and saying that the gods were sort of pissed at Crowley and wanted him to do something for them, especially the god Horus. Well, when she identified the god that was trying to communicate with Crowley, or the emissaries of that god, Crowley took her to the museum and found this sort of obscure wooden stele, funeral stele of 20. He said the 26th dynasty, but we think it's the 25th dynasty. And it was happened to be exhibit number 666, which sort of threw up a flag for Crowley. But anyway, they had material on it translated. Meanwhile, Rose continued to fall into trances and said that the god Horus wanted Crowley to officially, formally invoke the god Horus to initiate the beginning of a new aeon, a new age. Well, the circumstances of getting all of that prepared is outlined in a book Crowley called The Equinox of the Gods. And Equinox of the Gods is part of that big blue book 4 also. But it was also published in the 30s as a separate volume. And it's got a curious sort of thing going on there, because in the back is an envelope. And in the envelope are the single pages, facsimiles of the handwriting of each of those typed pages, or the typing paper pages that the Book of the Law was written on. So I'm going to digress today because it is such a special day, March 19th. Because on March 19th, Crowley invoked the god Horus with a ritual that he, with the aid of his clairvoyant wife, Rose, created to perform at the equinox. So in Cairo, it was, they started this operation at 12 o'clock noon in their hotel room on March 19th. Well, that's today. And I'd be stupid not to talk about that today and to read to you that invocation. That invocation would eventually lead to the another magical operation that received the 3 chapters of the Book of the Law. and set off the entire Thelemic movement. So I'm going to digress, and I'm going to read through the invocation of Horus. First performed, or celebrated, I think we should say, March 19th, 1904, in a hotel room temple. It was to be performed before a window open to the east or the north without incense, the room to be filled with jewels, but only diamonds to be worn, a sword unconsecrated, 44 pearl beads to be told, it says, stand, bright daylight at 12:30 noon. Locked doors, white robes, bare feet, be very loud. Use the sign of Apophis and Typhon. And that is this sign here. And it sort of hurts my old shoulder to do this, so I'm not going to do it 44 times or how many times that you're told to do this during the ritual. That is the lazy man's sign of Apophis and Typhon. Now, all of those instructions to, an unconsecrated sword, the instructions were also, don't bathe or ceremonially prepare for this. It broke all of the Golden Dawn standard rules for ritual work. And Crowley just more or less said, okay, I'll do it just to show you nothing happens when you break all the rules. And so he customized his the ritual, the confession, and everything else to take into account all these breaches of standard magical protocol. And it's almost funny to hear how brilliantly Crowley incorporates the fact that he's breaking all the rules into the ritual itself. So I hope you will pick up on that. Also, when we get into me reading the ritual itself, remember that there's an alternating use of a motif, a poetical motif of lines of 5 and lines of 6. Words of 5, words of 6. Names of 5, names of 6. Now that 5 equals 6 is the number 6 on the tree of life, or the heart chakra, or a level of consciousness associated with the holy guardian angel. 5 equals 6 is this very important level of consciousness in one's initiatory career. That being said, I digress in my digression. Here's a confession. Unprepared and uninvoking thee is brilliant. Unprepared and uninvoking thee, I, O.M., Frater R.R. et A.C., am here in thy presence, for thou art everywhere. O Lord Horus, I confess humbly before thee my neglect and scorn of thee. How shall I humble myself enough before thee? Thou art the mighty and unconquered Lord of the universe. I am a spark of thine unutterable radiance. How should I approach thee, but thou art everywhere? But thou hast graciously deigned to call me unto thee, to this exorcism of art, that I may be thy servant, thine adept, O bright one, O Son of glory. Thou hast called me, should I not then hasten to thy presence? with unwashen hands. Therefore I come unto thee, and I lament my wandering from thee. But thou knowest, if I have done, yea, I have done evil. If one, and I think he's talking about MacGregor Mathers here, if one, let's see here, if one blaspheme thee, why should I therefore forsake thee? But thou art the avenger. All is with thee. I bow my neck before thee. As once thy sword was upon it. That's a Golden Dawn ritual. So am I in thy hands. Strike if thou wilt, spare if thou wilt, but accept me as I am. My trust is in thee. Shall I be confounded? This ritual of art, this 40 and fourfold invocation. Now remember, 44 is the number of blood, spiritual blood, blood, DM in Hebrew, Daleth Mem. This 40 and fourfold invocation, this sacrifice of blood, it is enough. Oh, these I do not comprehend. It is enough if I obey thy decree. Did thy fiat go forth for my eternal misery? Were it not my joy to execute thy sentence upon myself? For why? For that all is in thee and of thee. It is enough if I burn up in the intolerable glory of thy presence. Enough. I turn toward thy promise. Doubtful are the words, dark are the ways, but in thy words and ways is light. Thus then, now as ever, I enter the path of darkness. If haply so, I may attain the light. Hail. Strike, strike the master chord. Draw, draw the flaming sword. Crown child and conquering lord, Horus, avenger. O thou of the head of the hawk, thee I invoke. Thou only begotten child of Osiris thy father and Isis thy mother, he that was slain, she that bore thee in her womb, flying before the terror of the water, thee I invoke. O thou whose apron is of flashing white, whiter than the forehead of the morning, thee I invoke. O thou who hast formulated thy father and made fertile thy mother, thee I invoke. O thou whose garment is of golden glory with the azure bars of sky, thee I invoke. Thou who didst avenge the horror of death, thou the slayer of Typhon, thou who didst lift thine arms, and the dragons of death were as dust. Thou who didst raise thy head, and the crocodile of Nile was abased before thee, thee I invoke. O thou whose nemesis hideth the universe with night, the impermeable blue, thee I invoke. Thou who travellest in the boat of Ra, abiding at the helm of the Aftet boat and of the Sektet boat, thee I invoke. Thou who bearest the wand of double power, thee I invoke. Thou, about whose presence is shed the darkness of the blue light, the unfathomable glory of the outermost ether, the untraveled, the unthinkable immensity of space, thou who concentrateth all the 30 aethers into one darkling sphere of fire. Thee I invoke. Thou who bearest the rose and the cross of life and light. Thee I invoke. The voice of the 5, the voice of the 6. 11 are the voices. Abrahadabra. Now, abrahadabra is that magic word that joins the 5 and the 6. Section 2. Strike the master chord, draw the flaming sword, crown child and conquering lord, Horus, avenger. By thy name of Ra, I invoke thee, hawk of the sun, the glorious one. By thy name, Ramachus, youth of the brilliant morning, I invoke thee. By thy name, Mao, I invoke thee, lion of the midday sun. By thy name, Tum, hawk of the even, crimson splendor of the sunset, I invoke thee. By thy name, Kephra, I invoke thee, O beetle of the hidden mystery, mastery of midnight. By thy name, Hur-Par-Krat, Lord of silence, beautiful child that standeth on the dragons of the deep, I invoke thee. By thy name, Apollo, I invoke thee, O man of strength and splendor, O poet, O father. Come, by thy name, Phoebus, that drivest thy chariot through the heavens of Zeus, I invoke thee. By thy name, Odin, I invoke thee, O warrior of the north, O renown of the sagas. By thy name, Yeshua, O child of the flaming star, I invoke thee. By thine own secret name, Huri, I invoke thee, I invoke. The names are 5, the names are 6, 11 are the names. Abrahadabra. Behold, I stand in the midst. Mine is the symbol of Osiris. To thee are mine eyes ever turned. Unto the splendor of Geburah, the magnificence of Hesed, the mystery of Da'ath, thither I lift up mine eyes. This have I sought, and I have sought the unity. Hear thou me. Mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen as the hawk's. By my head I invoke thee. I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. By my body I invoke thee. About me shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure. By their brightness I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle reversed, the sign given of none, save it be of thee, O Lord. By the Thelema I invoke thee. Mine is the garment of white sewn with gold, the flashing abbé that I wear. By my robe I invoke thee. Mine is the sign of Apophis and Typhon. By the sign I invoke thee. Mine is the turban of white and gold, and mine the blue vigor of the intimate air. By my crown I invoke thee. My fingers travel on the beads of pearl, so run I after thee in thy car of glory. By my fingers I invoke thee. I bear the wand of double power and the voice of the master Abrahadabra. By the word I invoke thee. Mine are the dark blue waves of music that in the song that I made of old to invoke thee. Strike, strike the master chord, draw, draw the flaming sword, crown child and conquering lord, Horus, avenger, by the song I invoke thee. In my hand is the sword of revenge, let it strike at thy bidding, by the sword I invoke thee. The voice of the 5, the voice of the 6. 11 are the voices, Abrahadabra. Now, all of that, in the silence that followed all of that, the god enters the aspirant. And the entire section of section 1 of the ritual that started out, O thou head of the hawk, thee I invoke, is now replaced and repeated in the first person, as if the god was now saying, I, only begotten child of Osiris, my father, and Isis my mother, I that was slain, she that bore me in her womb, flying from the terror of the water, Abrahadabra. So instead of saying, thee I invoke, now you say, Abrahadabra. I, whose apron is of flashing white, whiter than the forehead of the morning, Abrahadabra. I, who has formulated my father and made fertile my mother, Abrahadabra. I, whose garment is of golden glory with the azure bars of sky, Abrahadabra. I, who didst avenge the horror of death, I, the slayer of Typhon, I, who didst lift my arms and the dragons of death were as dust, I, who didst raise my hand and the crocodile of Nile was abased before me, Abrahadabra. I, whose nemesis hideth the universe with night, the impermeable blue, Abrahadabra. I, who travellest in the boat of Ra, abiding at the helm of the Aftet boat and the Sektet boat, Abrahadabra. I, who bearest the wand of double power, Abrahadabra. I, about whose presence is shed the darkness of blue light, the unfathomable glory of the outermost ether, the untraveled and unthinkable immensity of space, I, who concentrateth all 30 aethers in one darkling sphere of fire, Abrahadabra. I, who bearest the rose and the cross of light and life, Abrahadabra. The voice of the 5, the voice of the 6, Abrahadabra. Therefore I say unto thee, come thou forth and dwell in me, so that every spirit, whether of the firmament, or of the ether, or of the earth, or under the earth, on dry land, or in the water, of whirling air, or of rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God the Vast One, may be thou. Abrahadabra. And that is a pale imitation of the invoking ritual of Horus, or the invocation of Horus, that Crowley performed 12:30 noon in Cairo, Egypt, March 19th, 1904. Eventually would lead to the dictation of the Book of the Law, which I was scheduled to start reading today for you. Last night I posted a recording. A number of years ago, a few years ago, who engineered the whole session, and I did it while sitting in the walk-in clothes closet of our friend Gina Martini in Bethel, Connecticut. She came home from work and found me in her closet with earphones on and a microphone. Anyway, I love you, Gina. Anyway, that's it. Tomorrow I will start with reading. At 10 o'clock, I'll read chapter 1 of the Book of the Law, and we'll finish that off and continue reading our book, The Magick of Aleister Crowley, Handbook of the Rituals of Thelema. I hope you will forgive my digression today, but I think it had to be done. Happy beginning of the high Thelemic holy days. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.